Yes. Hello. It's another Confessions podcast here. Thank you for downloading this particular display of terrible tales from the very, very sinful Radio 2 listeners. They just keep on sinning. Either that or we're just digging up more listeners. So this week we have badly behaved bed-sharing brothers. We have holiday hairdressing hilarity. We have a muddled motoring mad mum. And a dad's unknown delightful dinner detail. Not sure about that one. Anyway, here it all comes. Right, here we go. Now, this is an interesting tale here from Jimmy. By the way, send in your confession to its own personal email address, confessions@bbc.co.uk. The Confessions podcast was up slightly later than normal, but if you missed any last week, it is available to download now. bbc.co.uk/radio2. All the details there. The latest Confessions podcast on the way. So, Simon and the Holy Collective, this is from Jimmy. I humbly don't do everything that's in this confession, don't try it. Okay, fine. Not that you would. I humbly seek the collective's forgiveness for a shameful episode of childhood vengeance. Now in my 6th decade, I feel the need to unburden myself of my guilt and shame. Firstly, I feel called upon to set the scene for this dastardly deed I played on my older brother. I was born a mere 13 months after my older brother Peter. He was the firstborn of the family. From the moment my mother brought me home from the hospital, wrapped in her arms with maternal pride, I imagine etched over her face, my brother was insanely jealous of me. He would repeatedly steal my bottle and throw my dummy into the fire. I suspect he wanted to do the same to me. You painting the picture? You getting the idea?
Yeah. Dummy in the fire sounds a little extreme.
Does it? Different times.
Yeah, okay, different times.
It would only obviously
melt. Yeah.
As we grew, I think it's a soother or a pacifier now. I don't call it a dummy.
Really?
I think that's right.
We still call it a dummy. Anyway, whatever.
I think that's, yes. As we grew through our childhood, there was also an unnerving brotherly tension which would erupt into squabbles and at times actual physical battles. My parents even had to ensure that we got the same Christmas present in case my beloved brother felt I was getting something better than him. We must have been a parent's nightmare. Our fraternal friction was not helped by the fact that we had to share the same bedroom, and get this, and the same double bed. The bed had an imaginary line down the middle, and if I accidentally veered over the line, my brother would administer a punch or a kick, or sometimes both, for a while. At times he would goad me into crossing the divide by nipping me whilst I slept.
Nipping?
Nipping.
With what?
Fingers.
Oh.
Pinching.
Pinching.
What do you think I meant?
A biting.
Okay, no, that would be a bite. Obviously, not a nip. No, not like that. Anyway, I imagine he could have done that as well. Rolling on some years now, our local authority house was being refurbished. Some major work had to be undertaken in the bedrooms, and we were offered the choice of being either decanted to another temporary house or to move all our sleeping arrangements into our living room. This is a nightmare. Imagine this. So my parents, in their desire to keep us a happy family unit, decided we should all sleep in the living room. So in the living room, my parents' double bed, my brother and I's battle zone bed, and my younger brother, Brian, who was temporarily imprisoned in a Z bed, one of the folding beds. As my parents and younger brother slept, my brother and I started fighting in bed, punching and kicking, escalating to the point where my brother actually had his hands around my actual neck, and he started to squeeze.
Wow.
Then, I thought, in a moment of fiendish brilliance, I'm going to pretend to be dead. So that's what I did. I flopped theatrically. I held my breath. And I held my breath a little bit longer. And I started to go red while I held my breath. Obviously, don't try this because this is a very dangerous thing. Anyway, then Peter started to panic. At first, he whispered, "Hey, Jimmy," to see if there was actually any response. I said nothing. I still held my breath. His cries of Jimmy became more frantic until, quite unexpectedly, I have to say, he wailed at the top of his voice in tears, even more unexpected, "I've killed Jimmy!" At this, my father rose in a panic from his bed, accidentally bumping into my younger brother's Z bed, which then sprang shut of its own accord, trapping my helpless younger brother inside. He was, however, for the moment ignored. My father shouted, "What's happening?" or words to that effect, because this is a family show. My brother sobbed, "I've killed Jimmy!" At this point, I decided to end my deception. and rather theatrically woke up. "Oh, hello," I said. "I've only been sleeping." My father was old school with things such as discipline and dealt with my brother by administering some old school punishment.
Different times, everyone.
Exactly. Don't try that. At the time, much to my amusement, but for which I am now truly ashamed to have caused him such unjust punishment. However, I seek forgiveness not for the devious prank played on Peter, my older brother, because he did deserve it, or even for the frightful panic that my parents must have felt as one of their children was eaten alive by a Z-bed, but I ask forgiveness for the added terror my younger brother must have felt at waking to hear his brother had been killed and then immediately being mangled by a child-eating folding bed. For this I seek your mercy. P.S. We get on really well now. Honest. Well, I guess you know, by the time you're in your 6th decade, you've worked it all out, Jimmy, I would imagine. Anyway, I like the little sideshow of the Z-bed springing shut on poor brother Brian. Meantime, there's a battle going on and he pretended to be dead. What do you think there, Sister Rebecca?
It's sort of normal for brothers to fight and to get into often violent fights, even if, especially because they're 13 months apart, you know, so they're close in age and arch rivals, I imagine. So I think Peter deserved it. He deserved to get the fright of his life. But what I don't understand is why the parents made these two share a bed. So why didn't Peter share a bed with Brian, for instance? I think that would have been much more straightforward. So I'm blaming the parents. I'm not forgiving them, but I am forgiving Jimmy.
Right, let's check in with Sister Bobby from the Priory.
Yeah, just desserts. Absolutely forgiven. It's an easy one. I was thinking, actually, why don't you put the two littlest ones together? Obviously, they don't have any kind of self-entitlement issues here, and obviously they're well-balanced, and the older one needs to be put in a small room, obviously different times of his own. But I was just thinking, actually, those Z-beds, I remember those Z-beds. They really were dangerous. So actually, I don't forgive the parents for putting a small child
can I just say they're basically very sound. It's just in this case it went.
Do you know what? I've done a session in a.
I'm just saying in general, it's a very sound bedding item. More to the point,
forgiven.
Imagine having everyone in your family sleeping in the same room. How'd you fancy that?
Yeah,
Caravan-tastic. What do you think there, Brother Matthew?
Well, I also think that the two younger siblings should go into the bed, and but only because I am always going to side with the eldest of the siblings, and they come along, these younger siblings with the cuteness and the being younger, and think that they get everything. Well, and in fact they tend to get everything. So I would say that I am definitely going to forgive because he is the eldest of the three and had to put up with this really annoying middle son, and then the other one in the Z bed who hilariously is getting eaten by his own bed. Quite right too. I am going to forgive, definitely.
It's good to see you've worked out all your issues over the
no
years. You
issues
and your younger brother.
Other than I am right on that.
Here's tonight's tale. It comes from Annie. Thank you, Annie. Dear Simon and the ever-merciful collective, the confessional tale I have to tell happened in my childhood, aged 13 to be precise. The annual summer holiday arrived, we're talking 1993, and this was to be our second family trip to Jersey. So off we went, me, my older brother, my mum and dad. I was overcome with excitement about the hotel that we'd booked, complete with a large outdoor pool, and the new friends that I was going to make. We arrived at the hotel, and with permission from my parents, I made a beeline for the pool, and that's where I met Leanne. Leanne was from Scotland, she was my age, she was a lot of fun, and we became as thick as thieves, spending every day together. After a few days of spending our time submerged in the pool practising handstands, or generally larking about, we became restless and began to wonder what else we could spend our time doing. Now, like most girls of that age, we love to do our hair. See, maybe Towsald is going to come into this after all. In particular, at that time, there was a fashion for wrapping small sections of long hair in brightly coloured cotton. Different colours, pinks, greens, yellows, any colour you wanted, in centimetre blocks, right up the length of the hair. Pretty and girly. In fact, I think they're still popular today. Did you do your hair like this, Rebecca?
I didn't, no. I didn't have long hair then.
What about you, Bobby? Did you ever do your hair?
No, because it takes too long.
What about you, Matt? No, I don't.
Yes,
you did.
Every summer I was doing that.
Whilst planning ways to fill our day, Leanne said excitedly in a 13-year-old Scottish girl's voice, Simon.
Oh, brilliant. Here we go.
I know. Why don't we ask our parents if we can go into town? I didn't put all of my effort into that particularly.
Try again.
I know. Why don't we ask our parents if we can go into town? I'm not going to do a 13-year-old Scottish girl.
Ray Winston again.
I don't think. Yeah, I'm far happier doing that. Why can't we ask our parents if we can go into town?
Oi!
We could look at the shops. We could even get our hair done. We could get one of those pretty coloured things that people get in their hair, you know. Great idea, I replied excitedly. I've always wanted one of those. They're so cool. So after our parents permitted a trip into town, off we went and found a hairdresser's. As we stood at the salon window peering in, Leanne asked, Nicola?
Oh, I thought she was called Annie.
Annie?
Oh, well done, lawyers.
Who I called Nicola sometimes.
Her nickname. Her Nicola
There's a
name.
nickname, that's right.
Yep.
I said, Annie, what are they called? I realised that I hadn't the faintest clue. What is this thing I need to put in my hair? After a moment of being stumped, Leanne piped up. Oh, yes, I know. I think they're called a dreadlock. Yes, that's right, Iris, but that sounded familiar. That's right, I think you're right, it's a dreadlock. We were both very excited. Leanne asked if she could go first, and in we went. The woman at the reception desk welcomed us. Leanne, looking ever so pleased with herself, said, Hello, we'd like a dreadlock. We'd like a dreadlock, please. A dreadlock, the hairdresser replied blankly. Yes, a dreadlock, the hairdresser clarified with a questioning look on her face. Just the one? Leanne and I looked at each other, slightly confused that the woman didn't seem to understand our request for beautiful, vibrant colours in our hair. Yes, she smiled, a dreadlock, just the one. All right, take a seat. I'll get you a folder of colours to choose from. Finally, she understood. Jersey folk, eh? We giggled. We sat down excitedly, anticipating the colours, and began to debate the mixture of colours that we wanted. It was then that small doubt crept in. That receptionist seemed very confused. Did we have the right name? Before I could think about it any more, the hairdresser gave Leanne a thick folder of samples, smiled and walked away. Leanne started to flick through the well-thumbed folder, but instead of finding brightly coloured cottons in every colour of the rainbow, she found many shades of brown. Brown and more brown. A little bit of blonde and black and auburn, but mainly brown, all in strange synthetic plasticky type strands. Leanne looked at me speechless. I looked back at her. At that point, the hairdresser came over and said, Are you ready then? Leanne looked at me. I looked at her. Yes, she replied in a rather high-pitched rabbit-in-the-headlights go. Yes, she replied. As she walked away, it suddenly dawned on me where I'd heard the word dreadlock before. There was a boy at school whose brother had dreadlocks, plural, a whole head of them. They were brown and black and definitely not pink and green or pretty and girly. I looked at Leanne and she sat there with a kind of grimace, pained smile on her face. She chose a shade of brown. Trying to be a good friend, I didn't say a word. I simply smiled in a supportive way and told her that I thought it would look really good. For the next excruciating few minutes, I looked down at my hair magazine, trying not to catch her eye, while she had the dreadlock glued onto the left side of her scalp. She looked like she was a Dalek. Once attached, I have to say it was a sight to behold. About 2 centimetres wide, it was a foot long and matted, slightly waxy and brown. I'll add at this point that Leanne had chin-length, glossy, tightly curled hair. It didn't look good. When finished, Leanne quietly came to sit next to me, red-faced, trying to tuck the odd-looking addition behind her shoulder. Are you next, then? Asked the hairdresser. Oh, no, thanks, I've changed my mind, I replied. And that was it. We paid £5 for the dreadlock, and thank you, and off we went. As we came out of the salon, Leanne burst into tears, and being the good friend that I was, I lent her my hair clip so that she could curl up the dreadlock like Princess Leia and pin it to the top of her head. So in my eyes, the crime is plain to see. Time has passed, 22 years in fact. The story that historically caused me to break into fits of giggles at the mere memory of it has changed in my mind. I don't know if it's the look of horror on Leanne's mum's face as she desperately picked at her daughter's scalp, trying to remove the offending item, or the helpless look on my friend's face as it was glued on. I was only 13, but I could have said, "Stop! Right there, hairdresser!" But I didn't. So, Simon, the person I need to ask forgiveness from is Leanne, not only for not speaking out, but for dining out on the story for a good 20 years. My fate lies in your hands. I can't quite see why a hairdresser worth their salt would stick a singular dreadlock to the side of a 13-year-old's head and make them look like a Dalek.
Because that's what they asked for, isn't it?
Well, yeah, maybe they got it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, these days, of course, you just look it up, wouldn't you? On the internet, you wouldn't have to, if you didn't know the name, you'd just, put in a few key search words and you'd get the answer. Yeah. I think, I'm actually surprised that Jersey hairdresser had dreadlocks to hand. I mean, you can't just go into a hairdresser these days and ask for dreadlocks,
well,
can
clearly,
you?
there was a whole album you could choose
weird.
from.
Maybe, I guess it was 23. The fashion at the time because her friend at school had dreadlocks. But I think she said that she tried to be like a good friend, but if she had been a good friend, she would have told the hairdresser to stop. The only thing I could say is that I don't think it's that hard to get those things off. I mean, they don't use super glue or anything. You just pull it off or cut it off.
I think she nailed it.
I don't think she nailed it.
Did she not?
No. I mean, I had hair extensions when I was young, and I know you can pull those things out. So I am forgiving for that reason.
Lady Bobby from the Priory.
Yeah, the thing is, saying no to a hairdresser is a rite of passage. Some of us don't learn it until we're way into our 80s. It's a really difficult thing when a hairdresser goes, do you like it? And the obvious time you go, or many times I've gone, yes, I like it, and walked out and just gone to another hairdresser to fix it. So
Have you
I
ever
think
had a dreadlock nailed to your scalp?
no, I think that what the girls wanted was a wrap. I think that's what they wanted. It's got a wrap, I think, and you wrap it round. That's what they wanted, and they
Like
got
a
the word
sandwich.
wrong. Yeah, no, that's a different thing. They're in the wrong shop for that. What I would say is normally, I don't think you're a good friend. However, given how long it takes any of us to stand up to a hairdresser, you are forgiven. Rite of passage. Good luck
Matt.
next time.
This is one of those times where I'm rather happy that I'm a man and don't have to deal with hairdressers or getting my hair cut, other than just going in there and saying, take as much off as you can possibly get away with, which is how I tend to deal with it. I seem to remember that the Princess Leia look was a rather good look and particularly fashionable at the time. So I'm going to say that Leanne, actually, you probably came out well out of
You've
that.
got it on both sides. You have to have it on both sides. It has to be symmetrical.
She did a different one in Return of the Jedi. Maybe it was around about then, and was the one that everyone and Leanne would have been the talk of her school with her Return of the Jedi Princess Leia style hair, and so no harm done, absolutely forgiven.
This one is from an anonymous mum in Blackburn. Thanks, anonymous mum. Dear Father Simon and the collective, this confession takes place around 7 years ago when all my sons were at school. Here is their order. My eldest had already gone to secondary school. My middle son had just moved into juniors. My youngest had just started infants. This is relevant. The Easter holidays arrived, and ridiculously, the 2 school holidays did not coordinate, as you would imagine. So my 2 youngest were off for 2 weeks, and then went back just as my eldest broke up for 2 weeks, giving me 4 weeks of hassle. Why does this happen? Rebecca, why does this happen?
I have no idea.
Well,
It's
sort
really
it
annoying.
out. Sake. Anyway, this is the spirit in which this email has been sent. That's what I'm saying. Towards the end of the 3rd week, I'm running out of things to interest the lone eldest child. So I asked him to show me how to play on the Xbox. Obviously, other gaming consoles are available. Father Simon, look, see him heavy type.
Really?
That one.
Oh, good.
I'd played video games before, but now I think this is really top parenting. I think this is really good. I played video games before, but really I had better things to be doing with my time, what with me being a working mum and all that. So the beloved gaming console had really passed me by. I thought we could have a bit of mother-son bonding as he educated me on the finer points of football and cricket, Xbox style. Well, we tried FIFA. I was rubbish. I couldn't get anyone to shoot or even tackle, and although it amused him for a bit how bad I was, it soon became boring as I was such pathetic opposition. Then we tried Ashes cricket. Same thing. I couldn't bowl or bat or field. We tried a James Bond first-person shooter thing, but I didn't really like shooting people, so that was a non-starter.
Okay.
It's a problem in a shoot-'em-up, though.
It is.
If you have a problem.
No,
You're
I
not-
choose not to shoot. No.
Obviously anonymous, you're not actually shooting, it's just a game. Anyway, then we tried Need for Speed, the road racing game. Well, I was okay at this. Not only that, but I really enjoyed it, and I was soon competing with him for the best cars and trying to run him off the road. This was brilliant. We were just in the middle of a particularly fast and exciting race when the landline and my mobile started to ring simultaneously. I almost didn't answer it, so wrapped up was I in the game, but we paused it and I answered the landline. Yes, I said, irritated. Hello, is that Sam's mum? It's the school here. We wondered why no one has come to pick him up. As it's 4:30. OMG, school finishes 3:25. I was an hour late. I made some excuse about having just got in for work and made jam. And I looked at the mobile. There was a message from a friend saying she had my middle son with her on the field next to the school. He was okay, but she needed to go home soon. Had there been an emergency? Did she need to take him home with her? Anyway, I jumped in the car and drove down to school. It's a miracle I didn't cause a real accident because I was still in the mindset of running people off the road as I'd been doing on the video games all afternoon with my eldest. Thankfully, I made it in one piece and picked up my slightly tearful and worried 4-year-old from infants who'd been waiting for an hour, and then my totally unconcerned 8-year-old who was with my friend on the field. So clearly, forgiveness, not from the kids they'd done much worse to me, but from the school, who never knew that the reason they had to comfort my 4-year-old was because I'd been a bad mother who'd been playing video games, not for an hour or so, but for over 3 hours. Doesn't time fly when you're on those things? And from my friend who felt responsible for the safety of my 8-year-old, even if I didn't. I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. Thanks, Anonymous Mum from Blackburn. Now, I suspect that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there'll be quite a few people who forgot to pick kids up from school because they were doing other things like playing video games. Matt is already looking somewhat tricky. Anyway, you've got a very good excuse because you're at work.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So Anonymous Mum seeks some forgiveness. What does she get from Sister Rebecca?
I love this confession. Yes. It's hilarious, and it makes all mums feel a lot better about their performance as mothers, I'm sure, including me. I wonder whether the eldest son spilt the beans with the siblings, or even the school, actually, because that's what I would be afraid of. But clearly there was no long-term damage. The kids were fine,
yes,
and she was having a good time with her eldest and bonding. So I'm going to forgive.
Have you ever forgotten to pick the kids up from school?
Not because I was playing video games, but yes, I have.
What were you doing?
I can't remember. Oh. Maybe I was shopping. No, it can't have been that bad. No, it was fine.
I
was probably at work.
Loads of people do it. Video games is a particularly spectacular way of spending the afternoon. Sister Bobby, what do you say to Anonymous Mum?
It's really easy, actually, like Rebecca. It's such a lovely, lovely story. The only thing I would say is, because I think you can be forgiven, the only thing you really have to be careful of is, I would always say, is after you've been one of those driving games, because I'm a sucker for this, is don't get in a real car. Do not get in a real car if you've been on one of them computer game things. Very dangerous, but you are forgiven.
Okay, that's an official warning. Thank you very much indeed. Now, Brother Matthew.
Those games are lethal for gobbling up time. I play my son on a certain game that involves an Italian plumber in a cart.
Mario Kart?
Yeah, there you go.
That one.
And he wins every time, and I am a little bit competitive.
Yes, I imagine that must go down really well.
It doesn't go down well, and I really hours will go past. You have to put timers on them, but entirely understandable, I would say. And
you've done the same, haven't you?
Yeah, I have not because he's been with me. I haven't forgotten to pick him up at school. So I am definitely going to forgive, because we've all been there. We've all done it.
This one comes from L. That's all I have, just the letter L. Dear Father Simon and the esteemed collective, I'd like to share with you an event which happened when I was around 10 innocent years old. We as a family had some friends of my parents over for dinner. My father, we'll call him Dave, was and is a great chef and loved to put on a little soiree. Our guests on this occasion were a couple who were opposite to each other in stature, but both lovely. He a little quieter than she. The lady, we shall call her Bessie, was well known for her beautiful voice. She loved her food, and we were all looking forward to dinner. The smells coming from our little kitchen were wonderful, and as always, as dinner was always running late, we were all famished and looking forward to our food. I, a budding and keen cook myself, popped into the kitchen to watch the latter stages of my dad preparing dinner. As he turned to look for the plastic pot of seasoning, still stirring the creamy dish, a pair of Daddy Longlegs floated past, and then, before I could flap at them, flew, kamikaze style, straight into the middle of the wok. Before I could so much as take a breath, the next stir of the spatula mixed the leggy insects out of sight, folded into the sauce. My dad, Dave, none the wiser, shook a liberal quantity of seasoning over the whole dish, stirred again, and announced that it was time to eat. Nice. As was customary in our house, dinner was served at the table. At first, all seemed well. Dinner was complimented and conversation flowed easily. And then it happened. To my horror, Bessie made a face and then pulled a stringy item, slightly jointed, from her mouth.
Oh, no.
Put it discreetly on her plate.
There was no warning on this, was there? Was there a warning?
Oh, yeah. If you're eating...
Too late.
Yeah.
If you're eating...
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It's all natural. Anyway, no one commented. No one stirred. But a few minutes later, it happened again.
Oh, no.
Another face, another stringy mouthful, another stilt-like leg emerging from Bess's mouth, this time with a question of the possibility of something unexpected in the dinner. My dad reassured her, trying not to look concerned, and dinner continued. As the meal progressed, I tried to disappear into my dining chair, and my father laughed nervously as Bessie found not 1 or 2, but 9 little jointed legs in her dinner and lined them up at the edge of her plate.
Oh, gross.
It was, like a little bone, you just put it on the side.
Oh, dear.
The evidence was by this time pretty incriminating. Crane flies aren't horrid beasts, but on balance, I'm guessing you wouldn't want to eat one. I could have stopped it, but I didn't. I could have told my dad, but I didn't. One question remained. What happened to the bodies? And the missing legs, and the wings, and the antennae? Eddie, it was the unanswered question of the night. You may wish not to think on this further, especially because I've looked this up. The common crane fly is an agricultural pest. So Father Simon and Bessie presumably had eaten 2 of them. Father Simon, I ask forgiveness from yourselves and the audience, not from Bessie. My dad bumped into her recently. No lasting damage, everything fine. But from my poor father, who had no idea how 2 daddy longlegs ended up in his stir fry. She needs forgiveness because Elle could have done. She saw the incident, and she said nothing. Sister Rebecca, what do you think?
It's very timely, isn't it? Because aren't we expecting a daddy long leg invasion
It's
in the
the
next couple
season.
of days? Yeah. Could have used conkers. That would have done the
Yes,
job.
that's true. And, yeah.
I don't really get why Elle didn't just tell her dad there were 2 daddy long legs in the stir fry. I don't get it. She didn't say that, she was doing a practical joke or she was
Maybe it all happened so
embarrassed or,
quickly. And
I
dinner
don't
was
really
late.
understand what
I
her
think dinner was
do you
late.
think that's what it was. But then she could have eaten them. It's a very odd thing to have done. So I think she wasn't herself. It was a momentary lapse of judgment, and she sounds quite nice, so I'm going to forgive.
Imagine those jointed bodies and the antennae and the wings all stirred in there. You wouldn't notice it from a flavour point of view, Nigel, I don't think. But what would you have done?
Well, absolutely. Last week we touched upon the fact that 2 billion people around the world are eating insects on a regular basis. They're very protein-rich, very good for you. The key is, with daddy longlegs, is chop them. You've got it, because obviously then you wouldn't get all this problem. But they are very good for you.
No, they're not.
And
What?
Yeah. Oh, insects, crickets. We had some mealworms last week, didn't we? Do you remember that?
So you're saying we should chop up daddy longlegs?
Well, yeah. Well, you can certainly
not
eat
right.
crickets, locusts, beetles. I've eaten them all. And a lot of it to do is the flavouring. It sounds like it was a lovely dish anyway. But the key, very fresh, of course, in this case.
You're not going to get any sustenance or nutrition from a daddy longlegs, are you?
A few thousand of them, you
They
might.
they don't live very long. Let them go out and enjoy life. Don't...
Stick to locusts and crickets. Locusts particularly, because obviously if you can capture them...
You're not a vegetarian or anything.
No,
What about all the chicken you eat?
Well, that was just a list of chicken lives.
Go
a bit
out
long.
there and procreate and...
Daddy longlegs, he's
run
got
over.
like a couple of minutes to
Very
live.
How have we got into this?
Yeah, well, anyway, so absolutely, Al, apart from that fact, you should just basically next time say to Dad, can we chop those daddy long legs up and a little bit more of a sauce and a bit gorgeous, very good with sesame oil. Forgive them.
Wow, who knew?
Who knew? Yeah. What's Dad meant to do at this point? If she had voiced, there's daddy longlegs fallen into the wok, he's not going to be able to fish them out. So I think it was already done. It's all part of nature's bounty, and as Nige says, we're all going to be eating insects as the oceans rise and Armageddon round the corner.
2 large Armageddons, please.
So yeah, that's all coming. So we're going to be doing it anyway. So it's all fine. So definitely forgive.
Well, they were this week's confessions, and if it sparked a thought, maybe you remembered some darkness in your soul. We all have one. On an email then, confessions@bbc.co.uk. More in a week. And don't forget, you can listen again to and download our wonderful guest interviews in case you missed them. Simon Sharma, who was here on Monday. Don Henley, the only UK interview. That happened on Tuesday. You can download that. Alexander Armstrong on Wednesday. And Nigel's fish finger sandwiches happening on Thursday. You head to the Radio 2 website. Remember, you can always become a member of the blog because they're the hardcore and they're a good bunch of folk. Anyway, thanks very much indeed for your participation.